Let me thank, first of all the presenters, both live and virtually. Those were fascinating presentations, and I know how much I enjoyed it. And clearly, by the number of questions we've got already, the group did as well. So I guess the first question that came in, I'm going to ask maybe Michael Casey to respond to first, and then Norman Steve afterwards. But the question is there an increased strategic focus on digital infrastructure as opposed to traditional physical infrastructure, especially in the current environment? Is there an increasing perception that the traffic congestion burden on highway infrastructure may be lessened in the long term given the current environment?
Yeah, so we're definitely looking at that as part of sort of our analysis and the recovery efforts of government in total from the pandemic, but also as part of the Greater Golden Horseshoe Plan. I do think that there's some significant potential there. In terms of all the numbers that we've seen on the traffic side, we're seeing the AM and PM peaks are down significantly. We're seeing, trip distances are shorter. So, I don't know what you call it. The congestion problems for people are less because they're traveling less of a distance, right? So even if the congestion is up, your total travel time isn't increasing by as much. So, from the travel side, there seem to be some really significant benefits. What we don't have really good information on yet is how much of a hit companies have been taking by having work from home. We've seen some surveys coming in. We've seen, a number of surveys that say about how employees feel about working from home. And we have some anecdotal information about sort of what it means for different sectors. But I think that's the real trade-off we need to be looking at. We need to understand, how much of this work from home can be borne, like what's the sweet spot where the travel benefit is increased, but the economic impact on businesses, is still manageable and still workable, and it still helps build a competitive economy. And that, to me, that's the piece we have to grapple with that I don't think we have full information on yet.
That's great. Thank you very much. Steve or Norm, anything to add to that?
Steve here. I'll just echo that. It was still too early to tell what the results are going to be. We know that transit is starting to come back a little bit, but certainly not the numbers pre-COVID. Where that goes, again, so there's that issue. There's also, telecommunications is really a focused sector of the employment. And it doesn't make up like half, right? So we have to be very cognizant of what those gains are. And right now, there's also the numbers are not demonstrating the amount of unemployment that's there as well. So it's when the employment levels come back in different sectors, like anything else, we need more data to see what the impacts are. But in terms of investment, I think the city is always invested in being one of the smart cities and leveraging technology and to make it more available so people can be more connected and can work from anywhere. But again, it's kind of limited in the sector. And again, time will tell. We just need more information.
Yeah. And I would say also, just to jump back in on that, from a resiliency perspective, digital infrastructure and broadband infrastructure and 5G infrastructure, I think the pandemic really demonstrated the importance of that to keeping the economy moving. To an extent that, it's always something that we've talked about in our regional economic development strategies in different parts of the province. But this has highlighted that even in different parts of the Greater Golden Horseshoe, there are barriers to that. And, that it's really critical for those sectors that can work from home to enable that to be able to function. And just also my personal opinion, I agree with Steve. Transit doesn't seem to be coming back super quick, but my personal opinion of this is, we're not going to be like this forever. I think within 5-6 years, we will have transit. I don't think it's going to be a long-term systemic shift in terms of the drop in transit ridership. I think this is, more of a shorter-term phenomena, or at least I hope it is.
That's great. Thank you very much. Norm, did you have anything to add to that?
I think they've got it covered, but I guess the only thing I'd say is that similar to Casey and Steve is that I think we're a little too early to figure out what, the impacts of that and how important digital will be. I mean, digital will definitely be important, don't get me wrong, but in terms of, that whole telecommuting from home, the brokers that we're dealing with, I mean, they're grappling with that right now in terms of, yeah, sure, people are downsizing on their buildings and the facilities, like specifically around office, and saying we don't need as much to house our employees, but at the same time, they're going to have to implement social distancing when they have it. So do they need as much, or do they need more? So I think they're grappling with that now. I think they've realized that definitely that digital infrastructure will definitely be part of that moving forward. But again, I think we're just a little too early to figure out what that sweet spot is.
That's great. Thank you very much, all three of you. I'm just going to move on to the next question here. And actually, I'm just going to recognize it. It was a question for Fred from CBSA. We're going to email it to him, but just for whoever asked it, because I'm not sure who it was a great question. Where are parcels being transshipped from one country through another to the final destination? Where does Canada fit into this and why? So I could give a bit of a view from Canada Post, but I think just so I'll mention it to everyone, we will pass that along to Fred and we'll get a written response back to you. I do have a couple more questions to get to, but I just wanted to remind everyone, if you had a question, to please feel free to chat it to Dean. She's happy to get it in the queue here and we will move it along. So our next question is for Norm and Steve. When will we move forward on getting approval for the next phase of development of the AEGD? The last process took several years. So Norm or Steve, you're both on mute. Maybe that's deliberate. I don't know.
I'm not on mute. No, just kidding. That's a very good question. And you know what? That's something that we have started looking at very preliminary here. You have to realize that when you look at 555 hectares and the length of time that would take to develop, if you go back 2 or 3 years, we used to say that the Red Hill Business Park would be our medium term in terms of basically companies moving into there. Over the last 2 or 3 years, that interest has gone over to the airport. Red Hill is still active. I mean, there's close to 1 million square feet in the air in the Red Hill if all goes according to plan this year as well. And we didn't even talk about those numbers today. But in around AEGD phase 2, those discussions are probably going to have to start at some time soon, because if we do realize the potential numbers that we're talking about there, that's one thing. But the other thing we have to worry about is, as development comes, is we've got a big trunk sewer that needs to be put in place. Right? We need the infrastructure and the servicing up there. So I see Steve nodding his head in terms of the Dickinson trunk coming across. So we really have to have that in play first, because right now, even some of the developers that are up there are saying they're looking at other options of how they can temporarily service until the trunk comes in. So that usually adds on added costs to the developers and whatnot. So I think that's going to be part of our economic development action plan that we're developing, and that will be coming at the end of this year. That I think that's a good action for the next 5 years, is to figure out and establish when AEGD phase 2 would start coming and rolling in online.
And just to add to that, that is part of the Grids 2 process. Is the phase 2 development will probably be coming in post 2031. So that being part of that process and how that should develop, I think, is an important thing to participate in as well.
And Steve, that's coming forward in the fall, is it? The presentations, the public outreach, is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different announcements from the province that we kind of have to react to, but otherwise, yeah, it's going to be the next year or so. So there'll be plenty of opportunities, and I do believe I embedded that link into my presentation that people can keep up to date that way as well.
Great.
That's great. Thank you very much. So I'll move right along because we've got some great questions that have come in. Norm and Steve, you're getting more popular with every question. So the next one's for you again. If you had to choose, what would you say are the biggest transportation infrastructure pain points in the city? Steve, over to you.
You can take a crack at that first, Steve.
You're welcome, Norm.
No problem.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's pinch points in the system. I know, and this is a conversation again with the province and how we can really integrate our transportation network with our highway network. We recognize that some areas in water down. Highway 5, Highway 6 is a pinch point, but I know that there's EAs that have been done, and there will be investment. I think recognizing some of the public frustration is these plans have been on the books for a long time, and just understanding that governments change, priorities change. It's not as simple as it looks, as much as there may be desire. So it's not blaming and pointing fingers at the province or the city, but it takes some time recognizing these are long-term pinch points and how to mitigate them. Again, another, I guess, worrisome issue would be that's Highway 6 North, but Highway 6 South, and with development in the AEGD and how we connect to Highway 403 and making sure that two-lane road is going to have more pressure. There's going to be more desire to go to the highway network, which if it's clogged, then they're going to go into the local streets, which creates pinch points in the future. And of course, as I mentioned, we're doing the Red Hill link feasibility, which is, great to add a lane for HOV or additional lane of capacity. But when you have pinch points at either end of that facility, what are you gaining? So I think those aren't small infrastructure projects. Those are pains, they exist. How can we manage those? Those are our challenges, but certainly those are probably the four major bottleneck pinch points that we deal with. I won't say daily, sometimes it's daily, but it definitely is a regular occurrence.
That's great. Thank you. Norm, in about a minute, I'm going to try to get one more question in here if we have time. Anything to add to that?
I'll be quick. And the two came to mind right away were Highway 5 and 6 with everything that's going up in Waterdown. We didn't even talk about Waterdown today and what's going on in the Four Corners up there with Stryker, L3, WPE and CH CH just broke ground this morning on their new facility up there. So development's happening on all corners, and there's more slated for up there. And there's going to be a lot of injection up in that area as well. And like Steve said, Highway 6 and 403. If those developments come in along at the AGD and that within the next 4 or 5 years, that two-lane Highway 6 extension is not going to be having near enough capacity to handle that.
That's great, Norm. Thank you very much. And I am going to squeeze one more quick question in here for you, Michael Casey. Congratulations in finally getting an integrated multimodal plan in place. How long before it becomes approved direction that we'll see changes in policy and investment? In about a minute, if you can, please.
So in about a minute. So we're looking to present the plan to government early winter, and and you consult on it shortly thereafter. I'm very, very hopeful. We put a lot of work into this plan. I'm very, very hopeful that the results of this plan, like what we've been putting forward and working with municipalities and with our advisory committees on, has been sort of, an integrated plan that looks at both infrastructure and policy. So I'm very hopeful that, what comes out the door at the end of the day will be, something that's integrated into our long-range infrastructure, into our infrastructure development program in the ministry, and directly tied into that, and something that provides significant policy direction. So, in about a minute, look to see the results of this, I think, early next year. The other thing I just want to note is we will be going out with some engagement on the plan in early fall on sort of where we're at right now on the plan in early fall on the Engage Ontario website, or I expect that we will. We're still just waiting final approvals on that, but we should be going out with a survey on that in the early fall. So, look to that. It's an opportunity to provide your input on what you see as sort of the major needs in the region, and what you see as, things that we need to be looking at given the impacts of the pandemic to shore things up from a resiliency perspective.
That's fantastic. And I really appreciate all the questions. And we did have a few we didn't get to. So maybe what I'll ask our friends at MTIL to do is to circle back with those and see if we can get those to you. I was told that if I didn't end this by 2:30, that I would not get my paid for being a volunteer of $0. So I'm going to turn it over quickly to Sahida, but I just wanted to thank everyone for the great participation, for the fantastic presentations, the great questions. I found it really, really very interesting. And I too want to thank MTIL for inviting Canada Post to be a part of this today. We're just thrilled to be a part of it and are excited for what's happening in that area and look forward to being a part of it in the future as well. So Sahida, I'll give you the last word unless Louis Paul wants to say something after you.
Thank you, Chad. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks to the presenters. I'd like to just very quickly reiterate that we will have one final engagement to complete the 2020 forum, and this will be the virtual roundtable that will take place on September 23rd from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. We will obviously send some notifications soon. And the event will be led by Richard Corsell, who's known to many of you guys and within the region and beyond, and has been a supporting member of MITL since day one. We will communicate more details in weeks ahead. In many ways, just want to reiterate that the upcoming roundtable will represent more of a beginning than an ending to this discussion. The past 4 sessions have shown us all that there is a lot underway in Hamilton Niagara region and also in the greater region to be proud of and to be excited about. So let's continue this conversation. And in the months and years ahead, we expect new collaborations, new innovative ideas, new ways of using data, new technologies and improvements. And we intend to work really hard to make sure that Hamilton Niagara will be at the forefront of leveraging new capabilities in support of fluid supply chains. At this point, I'll bring this phase of the virtual forum to a close. I wish I could have invited you to stay and enjoy some refreshment or receive your parking voucher. My colleagues at MITL and Transport Canada look forward to seeing you and having stimulating discussion in our final roundtable event. On this note, I thank you all once again for joining, or as Louis Paul mentioned, zooming in, and wish you a pleasant evening. Louis Paul, would you like to add anything?
No, thank you very much, Saida. That was a great session. And Chad, I just sent you an e-transfer. $0.
You should have mailed it. I'll look for the check in the mail. Come on.
Take care. Thanks a lot for everything, Chad.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.